Hey, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us in this second installment of Rockwell Automation's Education Program Learning Series. We'll focus today's presentation on our cloud-enabled HMI webinar. This will feature FactoryTalk Optix, as well as give you a brief overview of the different offerings that are available as a part of Rockwell's EDU or education program. A quick roll through our housekeeping items for today. The audio for today's webinar will be streamed through your computer speakers, so please make sure that your volume is turned up and your speakers are turned on. Your mic will be automatically muted, and you'll remain muted through today's presentation. Our speakers will come on and speak. Your camera will also be disabled, but we do encourage you to ask questions. So if you have questions on the right-hand side of the Teams Live platform, you should be able to find a Q&A option box. Please put your questions into the Q&A, and our panel of presenters and supporting cast will be able to answer those. Lastly, today's webinar will be recorded. It'll be available on demand immediately after it's completed, so you'll receive a notification as soon as that video processes. We'll also send out a link to the video recording, as well as much of the collateral that we'll talk about today that you can take advantage of when you're thinking about different ways to bring new offerings from Rockwell into the classroom for your students. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started with just a quick look at what you should expect to find in today's presentation. We'll give a quick introduction and overview of the objectives of today's presentation. We're going to spend a majority of our time talking through our cloud-connected HMI in FactoryTalk Optix. We will invite our academic enablement team on to give an overview of some of the Rockwell Automation learning offerings that are available to you as members of the education space, and then we'll close and discuss next steps. So in the automation industry, there's really kind of an increasing expectation that the tasks and the clicks and the predictable actions that people would take day to day are becoming automated, right? And that's really where Rockwell Automation fits to serve our customer base. There's a rise in API-based workflows in design, deployment, and testing. There's an increase in the demand for skill sets around programming. And we were recently just evaluating how many of the open positions across automation are recommending or requiring a language skill like Python as compared to, say, 10, 12 years ago. It's grown, from 10 to almost 50% of those in the programming space require those skill sets. Global users around the world are really desiring to access each other's work, at any moment. With compliance and regulation, the traceability and history of changes and contributions made should be, readily available. You should be able to work together on projects and work in a geographically disparate and remote world. There's a desire for more frequent, rapid experimentation. That's a high demand. It's really not just a nice to have anymore. And an increased exposure of applications, to prior deployments is a requirement as well, right? So we need to be able to see all of the tools that we're using today, as well as the ones that we're modernizing. So these are some of the human expectations that are really driving what Rockwell and companies like Rockwell, are really looking to bring to market, and how we can adapt our solutions kind of to fit the needs of today's manufacturing consumers. Really validating the needs of some of those, the needs of today's people, if you will. Organizations, companies, they're prioritizing the money that they are spending in areas aligned with modernizing their development and modernizing their design tools to increase collaboration and to increase the time or decrease the time it takes to bring new solutions, new end user products to market, right? So one of the keys that I'd like to highlight here is that nearly 90% of all companies in manufacturing industries today are investing, in adapting to modern design workflows. Today we want to explore just a few of those possible workflows as we kind of walk through our education program learning series. Just a quick cap for what this is. Today is the second session that we are hosting as a part of the learning series. This is really an educational partnership. Our partnership team is always looking for new ways to engage the kind of the broader education and community, right? So our instructors, our professors, those in academia, these are really the movers, the doers, the ways that we can engage the next generation of engineers and those that are going to be working in manufacturing to kind of engage on these new technologies. So what the intent is to give you a look at some of the trends that we see in the industry, give you a look at some of the technologies that we're deploying to our customers and those that are going to be in demand for the future generations to come, right? Just as a closing for my introduction, right, we did host a session on modern design tools, a cloud enabled and cloud native design platform for PLC programming. That's FactoryTalk Design Studio. We took a look at that back in February. We'll have all of the collateral available for that for Rockwell distributors on Seismic, and you can reach out if you'd like and you missed that webinar. Today we're focused on the cloud-enabled human-machine interface, and in our next segment coming this fall after the summer break, we will touch on digital twin. So it is my pleasure to welcome you today to our two speakers. We'll have Joe Zachariah from our academic enablement team in a program management role come on and talk to us a bit about what the EDU program is holistically. Some or many of you may already know Joe through your engagements with Rockwell and the EDU space. We will also be welcoming Sue Birch, our lead commercial portfolio manager for the visualization business. Sue covers many of the operator interface products that you likely already use in some of your classrooms and labs today. So many of the things that have a panel on them already are within Sue's portfolio. So really excited to hear from Sue on the new product introduction of FactoryTalk Optix. So Sue, welcome to the call. Thanks for joining us and really excited to hear what you have to say about Optix today.
All right. Thank you very much, Nick. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everybody. So I guess, first of all, I just want to comment that I'm having a slight technical difficulty today, so I'm not able to go on camera, but it's very much a pleasure to be here with you all today. So I thought I'd start out first with just looking at the portfolio of software. As Nick said, we have a variety of visualization or HMI products at Rockwell, both on the hardware side and the software side. So I thought first it would be appropriate to give you a brief overview of the different products that we have, and then I can show you where Optix fits in. You're probably familiar with some or all of the portfolio. So let's take a look. So on the one side, we have machine level HMI. So that's typically a standalone machine, probably a closed terminal, but it can also be software that's running on an industrial PC. Right now, we have 3 solutions for that machine level HMI as far as our hardware platform. So first we have PanelView Plus that runs FactoryTalk View ME applications. This is our most mature terminal, our most mature HMI software line. So it is very feature rich for machine builder applications. These FactoryTalk View ME software applications can also run on an industrial PC. So you do have a choice of what you want that operator interface to be. PanelView 5000 is the next one. It's the most tightly integrated with control logics of all of our HMI products. This is possibly a product that you're familiar with from the educational trainers that we have available. So you may have seen that. It does have, a very intuitive design environment. And like I said, it integrates very tightly in many ways with control logics controllers. And the newest panel that we have is Optix Panel. So Optix Panel is a brand new hardware line. It runs FactoryTalk Optix applications. This new platform provides built-in web client access and integrated remote access. And we'll get into a lot of, the rest of the webinar, we'll get into a lot of the features that Optix provides that are available on that Optix panel. So the other use case for HMI and the different products in our portfolio is a more scalable PC-based HMI. So these applications have probably the flexibility to support almost any size application and are industrial PC based rather than a closed terminal. So FactoryTalk View Site Edition, or we call it FactoryTalk View SE, it can support any application from a single machine station up to very large redundant systems with distributed servers for data, alarms, and communications, and can support up to 250 connected clients. So FactoryTalk View SE is part of our Plant PAX DCS solution. That's a characterized system of controller plus HMI plus other tools with a lot of libraries and other reusable content that's geared toward the process industry. So FactoryTalk View SE is a very powerful hardware HMI platform. So finally, Optix. So Optix, as you can see, fits in on both sides, right? It's machine level, particularly with Optix panel, and it's also a scalable HMI. It provides a lot of differentiating features, including full support for OPC-UA and the companion spec, MQTT support, built-in drivers for both Rockwell and third party, and its language for scripting is C#. So it also provides a few choices for design environment, which we'll talk about a little bit. And so you can choose whether you want a SaaS-enabled design environment or if you want to install the designer on your local PC, and it may be in the scenario where you have no internet connectivity. Next slide, please, Nick. So the questions you're probably thinking are, okay, so what is FactoryTalk Optix? What do I need to know about it? And why would I want to add it to my curriculum? So many of the things that differentiate Optix, not just from our other platforms, like I kind of just explained, but also from competitors in the market for Rockwell, are really things that end user manufacturers, which are also employers, of students coming out of college, are looking for. Some of those things are design tools with integrated version control and collaborative workflows for engineering, the ability to design and deploy and maintain applications from anywhere, and you can do that using only a web browser if you wish. The ability to collect, structure, and contextualize data. So if you're collecting data from controllers and other devices, you can use it for analytics, OEE, or other production improvements, and a modern programming language that employees new to the workforce already know, so they can get up and running, designing applications very quickly. And of course, for any HMI, you want that typical HMI functionality that's really required by almost any application. So, the ability to give the operator control, different objects that they need to have on the screen, presenting information to them in different ways through reporting, through maybe video content or PDFs to give them manuals when they're needing to troubleshoot. All of that content, is kind of that typical HMI functionality that Optix always has. So Optix provides all of these things and much more. It is a valuable tool to expose students to when they'll be entering the job market. So in a couple of years or in short order, when they join the workforce, they'll have experience with Optix and they'll be even more valuable for employers. So that's the why. So let's talk a little bit more detail about what the Optix is and what it can do. So this slide is what we like to call Optix in one slide. So as I explained, Optix is a new platform. It's very flexible, it's very open, and it's extremely modular. So the idea is it allows you to connect to your data sources. Like I said, these could be Rockwell controllers or devices or third-party controllers or devices. You can contextualize the data that you're collecting from those devices into information models. That information then you can expose to higher level applications at the enterprise. So whether it's some sort of a proprietary, analytics type tool, or if you want to put it in a data lake up in a cloud someplace, Optix has the capability to do that. And then, of course, like I mentioned, it has the traditional HMI functionality that will help you visualize the data that's being collected. Next slide, please. So I guess I'd like to cover, first of all, some of the differentiating features in a little bit more detail. So on this slide, you'll see the three kind of features on the left that are lighter blue. Those are features that are enabled in the design environment. The design environment is called FactoryTalk Optix Studio when you have a pro license. So there are two options. You can have Optix Studio Standard and Optix Studio Pro. Those light blue features are SaaS or cloud-enabled features that are added in when you have that pro license. The dark blue features are standard. No cloud is required. No designer license is required. You can use a free version of Optix Studio, and these features can be used with a locally installable version of Optix Studio that, like I mentioned, has no cost. So let's take a look at these features a little bit. Multi-user collaboration. So first of all, I'll get into a little bit more detail on how this works exactly, but a huge strength for FactoryTalk Optix is enabling system designers to work together. So they can work in their own, at their own office, no matter where they are, if they're in different places around the globe. With FactoryTalk Optix and its multi-user collaboration, they can have one common centralized data store for applications, and they're all able to work with the same files, checking in and checking out applications as needed. So I'll show you a little bit more about what that means in a second. Version control. So Optix connects to or integrates with industry tools such as GitHub. We also have our own version control and code repository tool called FactoryTalk Vault. But Optix integrates with those very tightly right in the design environment. Remote management is something that is enabled with a pro license. This is if you've got an application, say you are working as an OEM, for example, and you've deployed an application to your end user. If they need you to make a change or fix something, you can do so from your office with Optix, with the pro license and what we call FactoryTalk Remote Access, and it will let you connect to the machine where the HMI is running. You can make changes to the HMI. You can deploy as needed. You can pull the project back up to your design environment. There's all kinds of things you can do in a remote way that Optix enables. So as far as the the differentiating features of Optix that are not cloud enabled, Optix also has really nice library management. So we provide a set of libraries, graphic libraries, code libraries that you get with the product. You can use those, you can adopt those, you can create your own libraries, and it provides the tools to manage, reuse and share that code as much as you need to. Optix also has an open architecture. It's fully extensible with C#, and literally every object is available through code, through that C# code, using OPC UA. With that native OPC UA, we do also support the companion specification. So that's when I mentioned collecting data and really organizing it in a way that's very useful. We can support the OPC UA companion specifications, or you can create your own specification for how you want to collect and store and manage data coming from a device or machine. Third-party support. Optix has built-in communication drivers. So there's no third party or, second piece of software that you have to have in order to connect and use FactoryTalk Optix to devices. So we not only have Rockwell drivers, but we also have third-party drivers built in to Optix. Responsive graphics, I'll show you a little bit about what that means in a minute, but or what that looks like in a minute. But basically, you can develop applications in the same way that you would develop a web page, so that no matter what kind of interface your user is, holding, maybe it's a mobile phone or they're at their computer, the displays and the objects on the displays will adjust accordingly and look nice and be a useful interface for that operator or user. For modular and scalable deployments, this is something pretty interesting and pretty unique to Optix. When you create an application, you pretty much figure out what features you want to use, and only the code necessary to run those features gets deployed to the runtime device. So it's a very nice way to minimize the power that you need in that end device, and it does reduce costs for manufacturers when they need to buy that runtime hardware. And of course, runtime platform options. Like I said, we do have Optix Panel. You can also run Optix applications on an industrial PC, of course. And we have a device called Embedded Edge Compute that actually sits in the Logix chassis and can run Optix runtime devices or Optix runtime applications. So you don't need to have an operator interface. You can just have an application that sits there collecting data. You can connect to it with a phone or a separate computer if you need to have an operator interface. So a lot of options, a lot of flexibility with FactoryTalk Optix, and that's just kind of a highlight of some of the differentiating features. Next slide, please, Nick. So I mentioned that there are two types of studio licenses, standard and pro. So I thought it would be helpful to kind of show you what that means and what you can do with the standard license and what functionality gets added when you add that pro license. So this will be helpful for you to understand as you evaluate using Optix in a lab or educational environment that may or may not have internet connectivity. So starting with Optix Studio Standard, this is a free downloadable and installable version of the editor that provides all of the basic HMI functionality you'd expect. So it's free, but there are no limitations, no timeouts. It's truly a full functioning editor. Applications can be built entirely with this installable version with no loss of functionality. And in fact, we have a lot of our customers are doing just that. So they're not even using the pro version, they're just installing the standard version. And that is working just fine. So just to kind of walk through the workflow here, if you're using standard, you use Optix Studio that's installed on your computers to design applications. You would be doing that in a Windows-based desktop editor. Once you have the application, you compile it and you send it over to the runtime device, and that consists of the project files and also a little piece of software that is the runtime. You would do a local deploy in this scenario. So whether you connect your computer right to the runtime device, or you put the application on a USB stick and put it into the runtime device that way, it's a local deployment. And then, your runtime runs on them on that device. Next slide, please. Now, when you add the Pro license, it kind of opens up those cloud-enabled features. So the workflow for developing and deploying locally still is available. So, you can absolutely still install it on your computer. You can walk up and deploy the application by plugging into the runtime device. However, with the Pro license, you have some other options. So you with a Pro license, design collaboration features are turned on, meaning application code can be stored in that cloud or local code repository. This can be GitHub, GitLab, Azure DevOps, or there's a couple others that we support. In that Studio Pro environment, you can connect to the code repository. You can, download, open, edit applications. As you make changes, you can check in your code, and other users are able to work on that same project. And see what they're doing and choose whether to pull your changes into what they're working on. And that code repository keeps track of the application versions for you. So if you want to revert to previous code, it's very easy to do that. So like I said, the other thing that's enabled is remote deployment. So in this scenario, just kind of walking through the steps, you create your application, you create the runtime, then you have a choice. You can either use the cloud connectivity to, like if I'm in my office and I want to connect to the plant floor someplace else and I want to deploy remotely, I can do that. Or like I said, you can walk up to the runtime machine and deploy your application that way. So a lot of different options. Are enabled by Studio Pro, but again, it's not required. Next slide, please. So to just recap, this kind of sums up the use cases. If you're somewhere that has an internet connection, but maybe you don't have Optix installed, you can use the web browser. That's a web hosted designer. So you just open a web browser, you open up the Optix Studio interface right in that web browser, and you have the same collaboration, the same workflows, to work on applications. So no problem if you don't have Optix installed on your PC. Maybe this scenario, I'm on vacation and I don't have my work computer with me, but I do have my home personal computer. I can connect, through the web, through FactoryTalk Hub, and I can do all these features using only a web browser. On the other hand, if you don't have that internet connection, there's also no problem there. I imagine this is important in a lab scenario at a university. So you would have the option to install that local version of Optix Studio and no internet connection is required. So hopefully that's clear and kind of gives you a good idea of the difference. Next slide, please, Nick. So just to give you a peek at what that code repository integration does look like, these are screenshots of the Studio Pro editor. You can see right in the editor what changes were made, and it's very granular. So if someone moves an object a few pixels on the screen, that gets logged, and you can see that in that GitHub interface right inside of the Studio Pro environment. I did also want to mention that Rockwell does have a GitHub repository. It's a public GitHub for Optix sample projects. So that means you can go to GitHub, you can download sample code or like demo applications, or with Studio Pro, right in the editor, you can connect directly to GitHub and pull down these demo applications code. So Git is an industry standard for software development. And we at Rockwell here, we think that the tools for HMI should work in the same way that standard software development tools work. So that's what we're doing here with FactoryTalk Optix. Next slide, please. And just to wrap up the, that whole idea of cloud versus local. When you're using that multi-user collaboration environment, this is kind of how it looks. So user 1, 2, and 3 are at, wherever they are, different locations. They can be working on that same application at one time. As they're working on, they can push and pull project updates up to the cloud, to that central repository. And effectively, they're all working together on that same application. Next slide, please. So, okay, so let's take a look now that we've talked about the studio environment and the different ways that you can design applications with Optix. Let's talk about some of the other features in Optix. So Optix does mimic, like I mentioned earlier, web development concepts, and that's essentially responsive design. So with Optix, we make it very easy to create displays that are responsive. So those objects, on the screen automatically adjust depending on the screen size, depending on the form factor, whether it's like a mobile device or maybe even a phone versus a computer or a tablet. So this is a very nice feature, and there are a couple different options that you have for how to design responsive graphics in Optix. Next slide, please. Optix can also cater to different languages with built-in features. So this is not only having different language support, so you can switch at runtime between English and Chinese or English and Spanish, but it also supports date, numeric format, and measurement units, switching along with the language. So you'll switch from numerical representation will switch from a decimal point to a comma, for example. And you can set that up to switch by user, or right in the HMI display, you can switch language manually. Next slide, please. So this is about the libraries and the library management with FactoryTalk Optix. We include thousands of graphical objects that you can use. There's a lot of standard objects that you can use to create almost any display type that you need. There's a lot of nice features here with dragging and dropping. There's version control. And like I said, if you want to make changes to the objects or code that's in your library, you can tie that in with the GitHub and, do push and pull and have that same collaboration when you're designing reusable objects and code that are stored in your library. Next slide, please. So for connectivity, I mentioned that there are built-in drivers for all different types of devices, not just Rockwell, but all their other third-party devices. There's also the OPC-UA open standard and support for MQTT. So, Optix can really talk to almost any kind of device and excuse me, to physical controllers and emulate versions such as Logic's Echo. Next slide, please. So here I just wanted to highlight the OPC-UA. Like I mentioned, this is true object-oriented design in FactoryTalk Optix. So each object that is, in your application is accessible via code. At the same time, OPC-UA enables machine-to-machine communication and that support of the OPC-UA companion specs, which is, allows you to, excuse me one second. Sorry about that. Allows you to format data and collect it and put it in the format that you need for your use case. Next slide, please. Okay, so scripting. So anything that is not available standard in FactoryTalk Optix, you can do with scripting. The language for FactoryTalk Optix is C#, which is very nice because I think students are now learning C# in college. They come out, they're ready to go right off the bat. And the Open API for Optix that gives you access to all of the objects, all of the data, everything in your application can be done with C# scripting. So like I said, it's a very, very flexible tool. And if you, basically, if you can dream it, you can create it with FactoryTalk Optix. Next slide, please. And the last kind of key thing I wanted to point out is that when you're creating an Optix application, you don't need to worry about what the target device is going to be, because there's a lot of, choices. Like I said, you can run an Optix application on an industrial PC or Optix panel. You can see here on the screen the Logic's Embedded Edge Compute module. We support ARM and x86 architectures. And if you want your runtime to be a Windows operating system or Linux, we support that as well. So we also do have support for modern technologies, such as Docker containers. So as you can see, it's a lot of options with Optix for your runtime environment. Next slide, please. So I wanted to kind of show you a little bit about how to get started using Optix. So to get started, you go to FactoryTalk Hub. So that's basically factorytalkhub.com. That's if you went to the previous webinar, that is the same website that you went to access Design Studio. Once you get there and log in with your My Rockwell account, you'll see a number of different applications available. And you pretty much just click the tile for FactoryTalk Optix. So in this case, it's the one on the top left there. Next slide, please, Nick. So this will take you to the Optix landing page. So this is what that landing page looks like. There are a lot of tools there. From here, you can launch the browser or the editor in a web browser. Or this is where you can download the design environment to your local computer and install it there. So like I said, no license is required to download and install the designer locally. That Studio Pro license is only required if you need to launch in the web browser, integrate with GitHub or other supported repositories, or connect remotely for editing, deployment, and troubleshooting. So when you go up here and you're a new user, every user is automatically granted a 90-day Studio Pro trial license when you visit this landing page. But remember, that's not required. But if you're a new user to Optix and you wanted to go up here and try it out, you are able to do that at any time for 90 days. There's also a lot of tools on this landing page for managing your licenses and your entitlements, determining the appropriate size runtime PC to buy for your application. And it also gives you on the resources tab access to the demo and sample code applications that are hosted in that Rockwell code repository, which brings me to the next slide. This is the resources tab I'm still on the landing page, but on the resources tab. On this page, you can run those sample projects right in the web browser. So if you choose an application from the table, if you click open in browser, the application will open up right in your web browser. So that's taking advantage of the containerized runtime for FactoryTalk Optix. You can also download that code for that particular application from our GitHub sample code repository. And there's a download button right on the right there too. So these are some great ways to get started with Optix. One more slide I think I have, and then we'll get into a little bit more about the education program. So I did want to suggest through this 2024, we have hosted a webinar series on FactoryTalk Optix that I think would be beneficial for you. The first two have already happened, one in February and one a couple weeks ago. They focused on design and then collaboration and deployment using Optix, and those are available now on demand. The third webinar is coming August 14, and that will cover operators. So all the tools within FactoryTalk Optix that empowers the operator on the plant floor. So if you've got some time, maybe you're interested in learning a little bit more, seeing live demos of the product in this webinar format, you can register for the series. I included a QR code here that will give you access to the on-demand content of those two previous webinars, and it will put you on our list so you get an invitation for the third webinar in the series. So I hope you learned a little bit about Optix. I do want to thank you for your time. I'll hand off next to Joe to talk about the Rockwell Automation educational program.
Thanks, Susan. Welcome. My name's Joe Zachariah. Some of you may know me, some may not. I've been around Rockwell for a long time. I'm going to talk today about our academic and industry education program. Fundamentally, we work with academic institutions around the globe. Primarily, our focus is US, but we will work around the globe in certain circumstances. Our objective is to assure there is workforce available for industry to support the use of technologies, advanced automation, and so on. We don't do this alone. We do this with our partners. We have partners like FANUC, we have partners like Anderson Hauser, we have partners like Microsoft, we have partners like Cisco, Fortinet, and US Cellular, and so on. And we all work together to drive this out because those technologies come together to produce the systems that are required. So generally speaking, some people kind of look at us and say, well, you're the guys that come around and just give away product. Well, no, we don't do that. We work with academic institutions from high schools to technical colleges to polytechnic universities to research universities. We work with government agencies, both state, local, and federal. We bring all these together. We make a tremendous amount of connections so this ecosystem can thrive. There is a significant gap in talent available for manufacturing, and there's a number of things that we need to do. One, the big thing is make sure that there is training facilities available to do that. So how do we do that? We talk about access and sustainability. So we use a co-investment philosophy. Well, what does that do? Well, there's co-investment allows us to subsidize anything we provide for any school anywhere so that everyone can be supported. If we were to focus on 1 or 2 schools, we would not make the kind of scalable impact that would be necessary. For example, in the state of Ohio, so we've been working with the state of Ohio for over 10 years. Their talent gap is as many as 10,000 a year. Even with all the tech schools lined up and the universities and so on, we're still producing 3,000 to 4,000 a year. So there's still a gap, and the gap is growing. We also have the problem of population is shrinking. We're not replacing our population. So more people from a percentage perspective need to be drawn into this space. So those are the sort of things we work on. We make sure we can execute. In other words, if a school is trying to develop a program, we talk about that program from the standpoint of fundamentals, learning about technologies, learning about how to combine technologies, and learning how to combine technologies into systems, and then apply engineering methodology to take that further. We go from plant floor sensor level all the way to enterprise level. We can work with any range of interests. We help with grant support letters. We bring our partners along. We sometimes sit on grant writing boards so that the monies are available to develop these environments. So we do a lot. We do a lot in that space, and it's a lot more than just providing product. Referencing projects, some of the projects, so thought leadership and partnership. So some of the projects we've engaged in is one of the more prominent ones is the Connected Systems Institute at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. That project has been going on for 6 years now. Many partners involved, some I already mentioned, Microsoft, Fanuc, Anderson Hauser, and so on. Because of the prominence of that particular program, Microsoft has named it a manufacturing center of innovation. It's one of 7 in the world. So these are the strategies that we apply so that more greater and greater impact can come of it, and more applied research can come of it, so that business outcomes can be generated. We work very closely with educational OEMs. Amatrol, which I'm sure you may be familiar with. APT is another one. They're a Rockwell and Fanuc integrator. They both of them provide curriculum with their systems that they deliver. We also have our own training systems that we deliver that aligns with our e-learning programs and our online training programs. We work with organizations called SACA, Smart Automation Certification Alliance. They are a micro-credentialing certification arm. They get those sort of credentials defined using industry engagement, and then they get that adopted by both industry, governments, academic institutions, and they're covering a lot more ground, because this idea of micro credentials that build into larger capabilities is a different pathway for many people to engage in this type of industry. So we're trying to bring as much scale and speed as we possibly can. We're working with an organization called Forked Farms. Forked Farms is developed in a hydroponic education platform where urban farming can be defined, and Anderson Hauser has partnered with us, and this is going to be deployed in a number of different schools. The first pilot has been rolled out in a school in Columbus, Ohio. So we're continuing to move this forward. As Rockwell product comes out and Rockwell technologies come out, we continue to apply those with our partners, so that we have good method and predefined methodology on how to best utilize these capabilities in industry, so students get a real-time or real-world experience with it. You can see the things we're trying to do. We're decrease skills gap and lower risk to adoption. The risk adoption is key. If you don't have resources to develop it, don't have resources to support it, it's not going to get adopted because it's all risk. So agile academic industry, academia at the pace of industry. Academia historically moves much slower than industry. Our partnerships with them are starting to move that, starting to accelerate them and allow industry to have a very clean, dynamic partnership with academia as opposed to just a funding mechanism. So these are the sort of things that we're doing. Next slide, please. So our support program. So the first thing we do is we have we subsidize costs for academic institutions. So we have an EDU program. It's available at any educational institution. They can access it through our distribution network. So this simplifies that process. So there's distributors that cover the globe. Any institution can go to a distributor, say, hey, I want to be part of the EDU program. They get signed up, they get approved, and now they have access to all this global pricing and deeply discounted academic pricing on hardware, software, and those sort of things. So these are the participation in the program. You can see high schools, accredited technical schools, colleges, university, and there are some other nonprofit and government institutions that we support here as well. You can see we do the software toolkits. These are the same toolkits that we provide to OEMs and system integrators. We don't change what we're delivering. We just change the pricing so that it can properly support these academic institutions and meet their financial needs. Hardware products, Learning Plus, Emulate 3D is another path. So we've created one of the projects we've done is we've created an educational platform that requires no hardware other than a PC with models that sit on top. So it's based on Emulate 3D. It is a digital twinning platform, and one of these education series, I'm sure we could talk about that at greater depth, but essentially it has Echo under FactoryTalk Echo underneath, which is our controller emulation system. We've also embedded our virtual node controller for MagnaMotion, and we're working on embedding FANUC RoboGuide in there, so you have a complete engineering design platform to build up essentially any sort of mechatronics type system. Next slide, please. So purchasing Learning Plus is through Rockwell's Automation software portal. We're using the same mechanisms that Rockwell has for anybody to purchase anything that they want from us. This allows us to scale, allows us to handle many customers, as opposed to just us having to do things one at a time and in an ad hoc way. That's really not a sustainable mechanism. So this kind of gives you so you can go into the course catalog, you can select your courses, you can get your EDU pricing, and then execute your order, and you have your access. So some of the learning and availability, this is an example of some of the things that we have for controls, drives, motion, visualization. There's legacy products, there's software safety. So this is a very broad-based mechanism. So for example, if a student wants to get into Learning Plus and have access to this, the cost to them is very reasonable. I think it may have changed a little bit, but historically we've had it at $150 a year, and they get access to the entire suite. So what does that do for them? It lets them learn at their own pace in parallel with what they're learning at whatever institution they happen to be in. So they can move more quickly, they can slow down, they can repeat lessons, they can do whatever it is they need, and they're getting the quality of learning content that all the Rockwell customers get who we work with. Next slide. Classroom versus student toolkits. So the toolkits are actually pretty straightforward. There's no difference between what's delivered. The difference primarily with the on-prem system is The classroom toolkit comes with tech support, comes with 8 to 5 tech support. The student toolkits do not. Classroom toolkits are under $300. The student toolkits around $35 or $40, but there is no difference in the content. As far as software bundles and design suite toolkits, those are designed to be accessible to the schools as well. And I don't know exactly what the pricing is, because this is my counterpart, Fred Mitri, is the one who handles most of that. But that's been designed to support these academic institutions as well. Next slide, please.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate you. So we'll, like I said, kind of following the recap here of what's available as part of the holistic EDU program. We'll close with just another 2 minutes or so of kind of a recap of what's going to be available for FactoryTalk Optix and what are some of those next steps. So kind of just a recap from Joe's conversation there, right? A lot of great benefits as a part of the broader, more holistic EDU program from Rockwell. It's beyond, like Joe described, just bringing in hardware and offering discounts on that. It truly is a partnership, an opportunity to engage with us in different pathways for learning and engage with our academic OEMs. You can reach out to your distributor. If you don't know who that is, or you don't know how to get a hold of somebody, I'll leave you an email address so you can come back and you can use me as the person that can help be your conduit through our organization. Myself, Joe, Marzel, Frederick, Michael, Sue, everybody else wants to be here to kind of help the success. More specific to what we've talked about today, and what kind of comes next for your potential adoption of FactoryTalk Optix for use in the classroom, for use with your students, or maybe just as an introduction to some of the tools and technologies that are out in the field. Again, I wanted to highlight something that Sue touched on, but the cost for FactoryTalk Optix, the standard product, is complimentary, right? So that is something that you can take advantage of today. It can be installed locally on a PC or in a virtual machine in a lab environment. It's something that can be used to really start exploring the depth of everything that's available. We'll be sending out a recording of this webinar, as we suggested, as well as a education introductory kit. That introductory kit will include a number of, will include presentation materials specifically on the platform and the reasons for the way that things are done. There'll be supporting slides and materials to go along with that. So you have a couple options should you want to adopt any of this into your curriculum for a future semester. You could assign this as out of classroom work, maybe pre-work to learning about programming and tools that are available in the automation space. You can use that lecture material to provide an overview of some of the the different industry trends and capabilities of these platforms, or again, you could use the pre-recorded video to do so. Beyond that, if you're interested in getting a little bit deeper into the platform, there is some additional access and some other opportunities available that I want to make sure we extend to this audience. Right, so beyond using it today, there is a use it today option that's available for the cloud. So some of those collaborative tools we talked about, there's an option to get your hands on those. There's a Learning Plus module. That module will be something that students, yourself, or others can walk through to get a feel for the platform and get a feel for the problems that it solves, as well as some hands-on experience for what does that actually look like. That course is available now through the end of September at no cost. At that point, it will move into the the Learning Plus subscription that Joe talked about. So I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to talk about all of the benefits of the program before diving in. But over the summer months, right, if you're evaluating whether or not you want to make modifications to your students' curriculum or introduce some other opportunities, I'd encourage you, while there's that content is ungated, to go take a look at it and review whether or not you feel like it's a fit. The hands-on lab that I'm presenting here as well, that's going to be available regardless of whether you have that Learning Plus subscription or not, regardless of whether or not you have access to our cloud-based platform, it is built on the standard version of FactoryTalk Optix. It is a step-by-step, student and instructor guides that walk you through how to really do a hands-on lab, building objects and connecting the components inside of FactoryTalk Optix. Again, leverages the locally installed standard version of the platform at no cost to yourself. If you want to learn more about that one, I'll encourage you to reach out to us. You can either reply to the follow-up or reach out directly at earlyadopters@rockwellautomation.com to inquire on how to get your hands on our lab materials, our instructor kit, and some of the introductory materials that we've talked about today. Last but not least, just a deeper dive at looking at that Learning Plus option, right? We want to really encourage everybody to take advantage of the time now through the end of September, where you can go put your hands on, review this course material, right, and really evaluate whether or not it's a fit for your students in a future curriculum. So the closing slide here, right, and a thank you to everybody for all of your time, your attendance. We really appreciate your interest in spending your morning or your afternoon with us here at Rockwell. We'll be sending out in an email this recording, as well as information that we covered on all of the different opportunities to engage us, both more holistically across the EDU program and more specifically on FactoryTalk Optix. If you want to get access to some of these softwares, please reach out to your distributor. If you don't know how to get a hold of your distributor, or you're interested in some of the more detailed and more rigorous trainings that we have to offer in the form of learning curriculums, please reach out to our early adopter team. And again, we encourage you to try the Learning Plus module. So thank you. We'll have another minute to answer any questions that still remain in the Q&A. Again, appreciate your time. We'll look forward to connecting with you soon, and we hope to see you again this fall when we dive into Twin Studio. So thank you, everybody, and have a great day.